So good to have you here this morning. And again, I welcome you. We're in Matthew chapter 9, Matthew 9 this morning. Somebody, one of you, maybe two of you, three of you are thinking, when are we ever going to get to 10? But we're in Matthew 9 one more time, and we will get to, Lord willing, we will get to 10 this morning. Matthew 9. A lot of you know we've been in Matthew 8 and 9 for the last several weeks, and keep talking about the miracles of Jesus. The miracles of Jesus. Matthew 8 and 9 are all about the miracles of Jesus. And Jesus has power and authority over leprosy. Jesus shows power and authority over nature. He calms the storm. He calms the waves and the sea and the winds. He has power and authority over paralysis, over disease, over even death itself. A couple weeks ago in Matthew 9, we looked at, there's a 12-year-old little girl, 12-year-old girl, a religious ruler's daughter, a synagogue official's daughter, that she's died, and Jesus takes her by the hand and raises her up, and she's breathing, she's walking, she's talking again, she's alive again. Jesus Christ has power and authority over even death itself. Now, last week we looked at Jesus heals two blind men. Verse 27, 28, two blind men are following Jesus, crying out the messianic title, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." They called him Son of David, a messianic title. And we see over and over again what Matthew is doing. He's putting layer on layer, building layer upon layer. Over and over again, he's building up these credentials of Jesus as the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of God, the Anointed One, the one promised from what we call the Old Testament. So when Isaiah talks about one who will be born of a virgin, when there's these messianic psalms, Psalm 22, Psalm 69, there's others that talk about the Messiah. David, writing 1000 BC, it's not talking about David, it's talking about the Son of David who will come 1,000 years later, and Jesus is the Messiah. And we see that over and over again the last few weeks in Matthew 8 and 9. And now, last week we looked at, it says these two blind men. Look, verse 28, I'll read. "And after Jesus had come into the house, the blind men came up to Jesus, and Jesus said to them, 'Do you believe that I'm able to do this?' And they said to him, 'Yes, Lord.' And then he touched their eyes, saying, 'Be it done unto you according to your faith.' And their eyes were opened." Listen, "and Jesus sternly warned them, saying, 'See here, let no one know about this.'" What happens? "But they went out and spread the news about him in all that land." They could not help but tell the news that they once were blind and now they see. They could not help themselves. They were so excited, so joyful at the fact that they see faces and shapes and trees and leaves and all the colors, and they were just absolutely amazed. Another messianic miracle. And now we get to verse 31, or verse 32. "And as they're going out," here we go, he's talking about these blind men. "As they're going out," who now can see, "as they're going out, behold, a dumb man, a mute man, demon-possessed, was brought to him. And after the demon was cast out, the dumb man, the mute man, spoke, and the multitudes marveled, saying, 'Nothing like this was ever seen in Israel.'" Father God, have your way. Speak your holy truth through the power of your Holy Spirit, through the power of your holy word. Speak your truth, and may we not just hear it, but may we understand it. And may we go out and outside these walls and live it out and share it with others for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. It says that the blind men now are seeing, and as they go out, verse 32, as they're going out, behold, so the story continues. Now, if you're taking notes, if you've got a pen or a pencil, if you're taking notes and you want to take the back of your bulletin and write it right here, this is number one, on the back of your bulletin, on the back of the person's head in front of you, however you want to do this, but just write down, just kidding about that one, But write down, another messianic miracle. Another messianic miracle. This is another proof that he is the Messiah. He is the chosen one, the anointed one. He is the fulfiller of Old Testament prophets and prophecies. And here it says a dumb man or a mute man. Again, that word, I got the New American Standard, but it's a little bit older version of it. And so it says a dumb man. That has nothing to do, y'all know this, it has nothing to do with mental capacity. When it says a dumb man, it literally means a mute man. In the years past, and someone that could not speak, they were called dumb. It has nothing to do with how smart they are. It's about speaking. It says a mute man. A lot of translations will just say a mute or a mute man. And in fact, in the original language, if you go back all the way to the Greek, it literally can also mean deaf. So here's a person who cannot speak. They're mute, and they possibly can't even hear. So there's no communication. There's no way to communicate. They can't communicate with other people. They can't communicate with Jesus. But it says a mute person, demon-possessed, was brought to Jesus. Now, who brought him? We don't know. Guess what? I'll say it again. I've said it 3 weeks in a row. I'll say it again. Matthew is not big on details, but he's big on Jesus. He's not big on details, though. And so, okay, who brought him to Jesus? As who were going out? Again, we don't know anything really beyond just a verse and a half. Listen, we've got a verse and a half right here. That's about all it is, a verse and a half. Matthew's not big on details. As they're going out, a mute person, demon-possessed, was brought to Jesus. And at some point, somebody said, maybe like the paralyzed man with the 4 friends at the first part of chapter 9 that we looked at last year, just kidding, earlier in the month. But again, these 4 friends bring their paralyzed friend to Jesus, and they pretty much lay this guy right on a stretcher right in front of Jesus in a crowded house. Well, here, we don't know who the friends or who the people were, but somebody brought this man, mute, demon-possessed, to Jesus. And it says, after the demon's cast out, the mute man speaks. And the multitudes are astonished. They marveled. Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel. There's a couple of interesting things here. Just write out, number 1, another messianic miracle, because this was not supposed to happen. In the Jewish understanding of demon possession, and all of us know everything about demon possession, right? Just kidding. In the Jewish understanding of it, 2,000 years ago, though, in that part of the world, this man could not be helped. There was no help. There was no hope for this man. He could not be cured. He could not be healed, because in their understanding, most rabbis of that day thought that the essential first step in casting out a demon was to know its name. Somehow you got to get the person to speak its name. If the demon will just speak its name, if you can somehow get his name, then that's going to give you some power. It's almost like the name of the demon was thought of kind of as a lever or a handle by which you could exorcise or get rid of the demon for whatever reason. But again, that's what they thought. Rabbis taught this. But the demon in this case has made this man mute. He cannot answer a question. He cannot communicate. He cannot hear. He cannot communicate. He cannot talk. And so how is anybody going to cast out a demon if you don't know his name? Well, guess what? It doesn't say how he did it, but Jesus does it. Verse 33, after the demon's cast out, the dumb man, the mute man speaks. And everybody's like, we've never seen this. We've never seen this kind of miracle before. This was another messianic miracle. See, Jesus did something that he wasn't supposed to, nobody was able to do. But again, we're not given a lot of details. How did Jesus, again, there's, I want to say Mark 5, don't quote me on that one, but I think it's Mark 5, where Jesus goes to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and then when they get out of the boat, then a man meets him, and Jesus says, what's your name? And the demon says, Legion, for we are many. But Jesus even asks the demon's name. Here, this man cannot speak it. Jesus doesn't bother with that. We're not given any details because Matthew's not big on details, but all we know is that now the man is speaking, the man is communicating, the man is healed, the man is whole, demon's been cast out. And I think in many ways, someone will say, why are we given only like a verse and a half of this? I think part of that is, one, it's another messianic miracle. But even in addition to that, we're not supposed to worry about the details so much of the miracle itself. The important thing Matthew's trying to tell us, I think, is not necessarily the miracle itself, but the response of the people to the miracle. Now think about that. What's the response of the people to the miracle? Well, the people, the multitudes marveled. Nothing's ever been seen like this. This is amazing. This has to be the Messiah. The rabbis taught that this is impossible, that only the Messiah could do this. And now Jesus has done it. This has to be the guy. This has to be the one that Isaiah talked about. This has to be the one that Jeremiah talked about. This has to be the one. Could this be the one? It has to be the one. But then it says in verse 34, but the Pharisees. And when you see the phrase, but the Pharisees, then that's dun, dun, dun. Okay? But the Pharisees were saying, what was their response? He cast out the demons by the what? By the ruler of the demons, by the prince of the demons. Wow. They can't argue with the validity of the miracle. They can't argue with the credibility of the miracle. They themselves have seen it and heard it. They've witnessed it themselves. They can't tear apart the miracle. So they do something unbelievable. They say, oh, well, he's obviously in league with Satan. The reason the demon was cast out is because Jesus is his boss. He listens to Jesus because they're on the same team. And they're going to do this on another occasion in Matthew's gospel, and Jesus is going to answer it pretty sharply. But here, it doesn't say anything about Jesus answering it. In fact, Jesus is so unfairly criticized in Matthew 9. He's so unfairly talked about and criticized, and he's insulted. And we see this throughout, for example, Matthew 9. He's accused of blasphemy earlier in the chapter. He's accused of low morals. He's accused of associating with people of low morals. He's accused of ungodliness. And now, when he does another messianic miracle, they have the gall to accuse him of being in league with Satan himself. And so, because of all the opposition and all the criticism and they Facebooked it, they put it out on Instagram, just kidding. Because of all the unfair criticism, Jesus says, you know what? I quit. I'm not doing this anymore. Is that what happens? Anybody? Anybody? Help me out, yes or no? No, Jesus doesn't quit. Look at verse 35. And Jesus was going about, not just in Capernaum now, but he was going about in all the cities and all the villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the what? The good news, the gospel of the kingdom, healing every kind of disease, every kind of sickness. You know what? It doesn't say some, doesn't say half, doesn't say most. Jesus Christ is Lord over all, not just a little bit. He went in every city, every town. There was no place too big or too small for Jesus. He went everywhere. All the cities, all the villages, all the towns. Teaching in the synagogues. He was teaching, he was healing, he was preaching, he was proclaiming. In the earlier verses, we talked about another messianic miracle, if you're writing that down. This is another thing now. We see this in verse 35. This was his mission. This was his mission. Jesus was going about all the different places, teaching and healing and proclaiming, healing every kind of disease, every kind of sickness. This is his mission. And Jesus takes this so seriously that we saw it in Matthew 4, at the very end of Matthew 4. There was a very similar part of this. In Mark 6, Mark's going to say something very similar to this. But he went about healing and teaching and preaching and bringing the good news to people that so desperately needed it. Now, it doesn't talk about salvation here. It doesn't talk about the cross here because this is still Matthew 9. But I just don't want to miss this. I don't want us to gloss over this without going there. Folks, this was his mission. And he believed in it so strongly that he's willing to give his life, to give his blood, to give it all. And so in Matthew, as we get closer to the end of the book, he doesn't just say, you know what, I've healed a few people, I've taught a few lessons, I've preached a few sermons, we're good, right? But he believes the mission is so important that he came to bring salvation to those who would repent of their sins and give their hearts to him. He's about the mission. And again, don't miss that, the mission. And now we're going to talk about the motive. Look at verse 36. Verse 36. And seeing the multitudes, he felt, what's the word there? Yell out the word. Compassion. Anybody else? Compassion. He felt compassion for them because they were distressed and downcast like sheep without a shepherd. We've got the mission in verse 35, and now in verse 36, we've got the motive. He loved people. He loved people. He has a compassion. He felt compassion for them. He saw the multitudes, and he had compassion for them. One translation may even say pity. But again, be careful with that word. And I shared this in the early service. But that word there is so important because the word compassion, most English translations would say compassion. But what's so interesting about that is this original word that's in the original language, the Greek language. So it's the original language of the New Testament. It is a very, very remarkable word. In fact, that word, and someone says, well, pronounce it. No, I'm not going to try to pronounce the Greek word because I will mess it up royally. It's Greek to me. But I'll just say it's a word that is not found in classic Greek. And if some of you know what I'm talking about, it's not even found in the Septuagint. It's not even found in the Septuagint. But basically, this word that is translated compassion there was not a word in the Greek language that was so profound and grasping of what Matthew, the gospel writer, wanted to use there when talking about the gracious love and compassion of Jesus Christ. There was not a word in the Greek language that totally captivated that what Matthew was trying to share. So literally the gospel writers made up a word. They coined a new word. Spurgeon says this: they did not find one in the whole Greek language that suited their purpose, and therefore they had to make one. But up to this point, this word did not exist. But they looked at words for compassion. They looked at words in the Greek for pity. They looked at words for sympathy. They looked at words for love. And they're like, none of those truly encompass what Jesus is feeling for these people, to the point that he would go to a cross and die for sinners, wretched sinners. What kind of compassion would lead Jesus on a cross as he's had nails put in his hands and his feet? He's been beaten within an inch of his life. He's carried his own cross up the hill of Golgotha, and they nail him up there, hoist him up in the air, and as he's dying, breathing his last breaths, he says what? Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. What word could encapsulate that? And they couldn't find one. So they came up with a word that's translated here, compassion. But folks, if you don't miss this, the mission, verse 35, the motive, verse 36, he felt compassion because they were distressed and downcast like sheep without a shepherd. You ever been in a crowd and just looked around and you're like, you know what, I'm so sick of people and blah, 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 blah. But then as you look around and really start to look around, you're like, wow, there are people hurting and grieving and struggling Have you ever thought about that? You're in a grocery store line, and you're late for getting home, after work or whatever, but you're in the grocery store line, and, and I won't say that I've done this, but you're like, well, they've got less than 10 items, and never mind, so, right? But have you ever really thought about these people in line in front of me and behind me? Some of them are really hurting. Now, I had somebody tell me at church one day, they said, when I come to church, I just feel so out of place because all those people have it all together. And I just don't feel like I've got it all together. But all these other people have it all together. Y'all got it all together? Everybody good? I've told people, a lot of times we come with blinders on, and we're all about our comfort, our convenience, our preferences, our likes, our wants, our wishes, and we come with blinders on. But I've told some people sometimes when they ask, I'm like, look, if you look down the end of your row, don't do it right now. But if you look down to the other end of your pew, or maybe if you look to the other side of the aisle, there are people that might be really hurting. And they may even say to you to your face, oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. But their doctor may have told them on Friday, we think it's cancer. Or they may have just been going through something in the last week where their spouse says, I don't know if I love you anymore. Or if this parent and a teenager just are at each other's throats and just can't quite seem to be reconciled. And when you're in a crowd like this and you think, I'm sure everybody's great, but could it be that there are people hurting and grieving and needing a smile, needing encouragement, needing compassion? And Jesus saw the crowds, the multitudes, and he felt compassion. It's a word that literally starts in the gut. It literally, if you say, what does that mean? It literally means to be here in the viscera, to be troubled, or to struggle here in the bowels. Someone says, well, that's weird. Well, when we talk about our feelings sometimes, someone says, so-and-so broke up with so-and-so. They broke her heart, or they broke his heart. Do they really break your heart? I mean, your heart's still pumping, right? Or if someone says, I just can't stand them. I hate their guts. Do you really hate their guts? That's kind of scary, right? But we use words like that. But this word here, compassion, literally means to struggle, to grieve in here. It's a similar word, or at least the same word that in John 11, when it says Jesus is at the tomb of Lazarus, and it says he was deeply moved or deeply troubled in spirit. He was deeply moved in spirit, so much so that he wept. Knowing that he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead in just a few moments, he wept. Why did he weep? He was deeply moved here in the depths of the deep of his being. It's the same word. He felt compassion, which would lead him to a cross for you and for me. But he felt compassion for them. Why? Because they were distressed and downcast. Another translation says harassed and helpless. Like what? Like sheep without a what? Like sheep without a shepherd. That first word, distressed or harassed, it can actually, is also in the original, it can also be annoyed, or even more violently, it can mean mutilated and mauled, like by a wild animal. Jesus looked at the multitudes and he saw people being mauled. They were being distressed and weary and downcast and downtrodden. They were being hurt and mutilated. That sounds like strong language, like sheep without a shepherd. And what's the weird thing? Don't miss this. We're talking about Israel. We're talking about Galilee. We're talking about Judea. where there are thousands of priests. The temple is crowded. There's a lot of religious activity. There's all these Pharisees, all these Sadducees. There's even a group called Essenes or Essenes. There's all these religious groups. There's these Pharisees and Sadducees. But Jesus says, but instead of shepherding people, instead of helping people find their way and be reconciled and restored to fullness with God, instead, they're heaping even heavier burdens on the people. And the people are being mauled and distressed. And Jesus feels that so deeply. These Pharisees and these religious leaders are just heaping more and more burdens on the people. If you want to be right with God, there's 613 things that you've got to do. And if you break even one of the 613 things, then you're unclean, you're unrighteous, you're not right with holy God. And they felt so burdened, so much so that this is Matthew 9. Matthew 11, at the very end of Matthew 11, Jesus says what? Come unto me, all who are weary and heavy laden and burdened, and I will give you rest. Because he looked out at crowds of people who were beaten up. Instead of being shepherded by the religious leaders, by the teachers, and by those that should shepherd, they were being beaten up and burdened even heavier. Jesus says, but if you'll take my yoke, it's easy and light. And if you'll take it upon yourself, if you'll take my yoke upon you, then I'll give you rest. They were like sheep without a shepherd. Verse 37, then Jesus said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. There's a big harvest. There's a plentiful harvest, but the workers are few. Jesus says, but we can't. He said, I'm not doing it by myself. I got a mission, but I'm not going to do it by myself. I need workers. And so he says in verse 38, therefore beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers unto the harvest. Beseech the Lord. The word is pray. Pray to the Lord of the harvest. Pray, verse 38, pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into the harvest. So the motive is compassion. The means, if you're still taking notes at all, the means for the mission is prayer and people. Prayer and people. He says in that verse, pray for the Lord of the harvest to send out workers. Now, in that last verse of that chapter, pray that the Lord of the harvest to send out workers. The word send out there, I don't know what you want to do with this one, but the word to send out is actually the same word in the original language that means to cast out a demon. In the same way Jesus cast out a demon, it says that Jesus is sending out, casting out, thrusting. It's a violent word. Thrusting out, casting out, sending out workers into the harvest. And someone goes, that just seems like a violent word. Why would workers need to be cast out, thrust out? Can I share a theory? And please don't take this personally, because I mean it for everybody. So, we live in a day in America where a lot of our churches are filled with people who worship the gods of convenience and comfort. Comfort and convenience. Convenience and comfort. And I'm not going to play with you if you don't do it my way. Everything's got to be convenient. Everything's got to be comfortable. And if you want me to step outside my comfort zone, then you got another thing coming, because I ain't doing that. And so it's not just send out workers, but he says, pray that the Lord of the harvest would thrust them out, send them out, cast them out in such a violent way, because they don't want to go. A lot of them just want convenience and comfort. I just want to be comfortable. I just want to be convenient. I want everything to be convenient. And but listen, if we sign up to further the mission of Jesus, we are not going to have a lot of comfort and convenience. And just on that note, I'll share this real quick. We are at Pleasant Valley, and I'll just say, we want so much to see people grow in their faith and then go outside these walls to share the good news, to share, to further the mission. That this is what we're doing. We're asking people, we're begging people, we're encouraging people, get into Bible study, get into discipleship groups, get into D groups, get into Sunday school, get in all these things. And it's so important, we'll talk about this in a minute, it's so important to learn and grow in your faith and get more solid in your faith. And we're so committed to that we're talking about a building project. And we've been talking about this now for about a year. But the bottom line is, and I hope you've heard this already in the last year, we do not have another room to start a new Sunday school class on the whole campus. And so whether we say, well, hey, we want to start a new adult Sunday school class, we want to start a new youth Sunday school class, we want to start a new children's Sunday school class, we do not have that classroom here. It's not here. And so every room has a class. And so we want to be a part of a building project because, and someone says, well, that's not going to be comfortable and that's not going to be convenient. You're exactly right. And part of our mission at church is about reaching and teaching and sowing and growing, and it's coming alongside verse 35. Jesus was about these things, healing, teaching, preaching, all these things. We're coming alongside, and we want to further that. We want to be hands and feet. We want to be salt and light. And the first thing is to come and to learn and to listen and to be discipled. And that's another reason why we're doing this. Look at verse 38 again. Therefore, beseech, pray the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. Now, chapter 10, verse 1. And having summoned his 12, wait a minute. What's the word there? His 12, what's the word? Disciples. How many are there? 12. 12 disciples. Okay. He gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out, to heal every kind of disease, every kind of sickness. So basically, he's had the authority. He has the authority. Now he says, I'm giving it to you. I'm giving you the authority. I'm sharing it with you that you further the mission that I'm a part of. And then verse 2. Now the names of the 12 apostles. What's the word there? What's the word there? Apostles. How many are there? 12. Now wait a minute. In verse 1, they're called 12 disciples. In verse 2, they're called 12 apostles. Is this the same group? Yes. What just changed in one verse? What changed in one verse? And I believe in Matthew's gospel, this is the only place we see that word, apostles. What changed in one verse? They went from being 12 disciples, and now they're 12 apostles. What changed? The word disciple means learner. It means to sit under the feet of the master of Jesus and to just soak it in like a sponge. Just soak it in like a sponge. To receive, to hear it and to learn it and to then imitate and emulate the master. To follow the example, to follow the teachings and to literally, if the master jumps, you jump. If the master runs, you run. But you do what the master says. To be a learner, to be a disciple. But then that second word, that word apostle, that's a different word. That literally means to be sent out. To be sent out. Called out to be sent out. And folks, listen, this is a both and. Please don't misunderstand this. Someone will say, well, Mac, what are we about at PVN? We want to reach, teach, sow, grow. So we have Bible studies. You know what? We can have Bible studies Sunday morning, Sunday night. We can have Monday. We can have Tuesday. We got Wednesday night Bible studies. We got Thursday. We can have a Bible study every single day of the week. And we can have multiple Bible studies every single day. But if that's all we do, we are missing it. Because we're not just to be disciples. The next part is to be sent out. It's not an either or, it's a both and. And there are people crowds and multitudes of people in our community, in our county, and beyond who need Jesus, and they're going to hell without Christ if someone doesn't share with them the good news of Jesus Christ. Someone says, well, we're in the South, so it can't be too many people, right? We've got people right now in our community that believe that they're Christians because they're not Buddhists, they're not Muslims, they're not Jewish, so I guess I'm a Christian, right? No! It's not just to have a Bible study and to be a learner, but it's to be sent out. It's to be both. It's a both and. Look at verse 1 again. When will be done? Chapter 10, verse 1. And having summoned his 12 disciples, he gave them authority over unclean spirits and disease. Having summoned his 12 disciples. That word summoned there, it's an interesting word in the original language, and I'm probably going to mess it up. I was scared to try to get the word compassion, but I'll try this one. So it's the word proskaleo. Proskaleo in the original language. It's a simple word. Kaleo is to call. Pros is toward. And so it's a simple word, but it's a very, very, very intense word. It literally means, proskaleo, it literally means to call toward. To call someone toward. It's translated summoned here in the New American. To summon, but it means to call toward. And it's not just, hey, y'all go out there and do this. It means to call toward so that you have a face-to-face experience, a face-to-face encounter with Jesus. So what he's doing, he's like, look, he's not just sending out people that he doesn't know. He's sending out people that literally come to him and have a face-to-face with Jesus. And they're learners, they're disciples. And then they're sent out, they're apostles. And these learners are now sent out because they've had a face-to-face with Jesus. Now here's my question, I'm done. Have you had a face-to-face with Jesus Christ? Have you come to a place where you have been face-to-face with Christ and you've accepted the fact that you're a sinner in need of a Savior, that you believe that Jesus died and rose again and you've commit your life to Him? Have you had a face-to-face with Jesus to where you're like, I choose to follow you. I choose to imitate you, to emulate you, to follow you anywhere and to do whatever you want me to do and to trust your word. And I want to go wherever you want me to go, but I'll go. Someone says, Mac, how dare you? I've been in church 30 years. I didn't ask how many years you've been at church. I asked, have you had a face-to-face with Jesus?